Hi everybody, and thanks for joining me today. Our project for today is going to be the stator cover and the cover on the other side, which I can't remember the name of right at the moment. So first thing we got to do is we got to drain the oil. So 17 mil wrench here. This hadn't been race prepped yet, so there was no safety wire on that, so nothing I had to remove. And if you remember from one of the previous videos, I actually have a Pro Bolt titanium replacement bolt for this guy. We're going to make sure to let this drain for a good bit of time because the bike is cold. I don't have a good battery for it at the moment, so I have no way to start it. So we got to deal with that. But while that's draining, I'll give that just a second before we pull the oil filter off, and then we can actually start prepping the cover that we have here from Woodcraft. So we got to put the slider on here. So from the inside is where we're going to put our bolts on. So I'm going to let that go ahead and drain for a little bit. We'll start putting this cover on while it's draining. So as per the Woodcraft instructions, we got to make sure we put blue Loctite on these bolts that go onto the inside of that cover. So our blue Loctite here. Alright, so got the first one there started. Of course, not tightening all the way. Never want to tighten them all the way until we have all of our bolts in place, because that's a good way to have to go back around and loosen things so that we can get it all put together correctly. And before I put that last one in here, I'll make sure to show you they have a washer and an O-ring. It's important to have both of those there for this application, otherwise you could end up with a leak. And you can actually see, hopefully here in the video, I'll try to get it in the light so you can see it. There's actually a machined step here, and that's where the O-ring seats. And like I said, here's your washer and your O-ring. We'll make sure we have all of that stuff installed. This last one started here. Actually, I'll come back over here. We're going to remove this oil filter, which hopefully I don't have to try to get a wrench into. Bolts for the cover. So we're going to go every other and just break them loose. Just breaking them loose a little bit. And then once we get them all broken loose, one more time around, making sure that they're all loosened so we don't end up with any kind of torsion on that cover. And make sure we don't damage the cover, because it's still a good cover. That I'm going to go ahead and list for sale. I'm sure that someone out there will appreciate finding that cover at less than factory price. Okay, so now that we have the bolts out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean them with some acetone. I already wire wheeled them to get the Loctite off of them, but we want to make sure that they're good and clean. There's no oil on there, otherwise that could affect the that bond of that Loctite. Just real quick, rinse them off. Take and dry them off. Now we're going to take and we're going to apply our Loctite. In this case, we just need it at the end of the threads, because that's all that's actually engaging, not the full thread length. So we get our old gasket off of there. We actually need to clean that surface. Okay, so we have the old gasket cleaned off. We have everything torqued and Loctited here. So now we're ready to put everything back together. We have this guy in place, make sure everything lines up. And the last thing we have to do is you gotta make sure this grommet is tucked into place. Alright, so just real quick check our gasket fitment, make sure that everything lines up how it's supposed to before we go and start putting any bolts in. Don't like this up here. There we go. Okay, so we got our gasket all lined up, ready to put the bolts in. And these get torqued to 107 inch-pounds. Again, going with inch-pounds instead of foot-pounds because that's too low a range for most torque wrenches that go in foot-pounds range. Alright, next thing we're ready to install is this drain plug bolt from ProBolt. Have my new gasket on here. So go ahead and put this guy down here. Start that. This one gets torqued to 32 foot-pounds. There we go. And the last thing that we have to install on this side is our new filter. And these come already pre-greased, so we don't need to put any oil on that on the O-ring there. Just move some stuff out of the way here. Start that. So we're snug there. We're touching the O-ring there. And there's a quarter turn further. So we're all good to go. Now we're ready to go to the other side.